What is going on, you guys? I'm your host, Stacey Cole Morgan, and you are listening to the Morgan Man Sports Podcast here on Spotify, Google Podcasts, GoodPod HQ, or wherever you find your preferred podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about the Major 4 Week Number 2 Online Qualifiers, all happening this weekend with some juicy matches to get into. And also on today's podcast, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the updated CDL point standings, my thoughts thus far going into weekend 2 of the Major 4 Online Qualifiers, and who I think needs to step up their game before the end of the regular season. So without any further delay, let's go get straight into today's action.
The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Welcome to the Morgan Man Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Cole Morgan. Here on the Morgan Man Sports Podcast, we talk Atlanta Falcons news, pre-game predictions, and all other news surrounding the Atlanta Falcons.
Touchdown, Atlanta!
Also on the podcast, we talk Call of Duty League, Esports, covering Roster Mania, major predictions, CoD Champs, player trades, and much more to get you ready for every single CDL weekend.
Scuff goes through, and Scuff snaps, wins the one-on-one in optic with the reverse sweep.
If that sounds good with you, put on your Falcons jersey, grab your gaming headset, and let's get this show started. Alright guys, so we are going to go ahead and get right into things with the updated CDL point standings. So as always, this is in chronological order right here from 1 all the way to 12. So coming at number 1 is the Atlanta FaZe with 435 CDL point standings with a 29-6 map win-loss ratio. Coming at number 2 is Optic Texas with 415 CDL points, 29-10. Number 3 is Toronto Ultra with 427-8 map win-loss ratio. New York Subliners 265, 21-13. Seattle Surge 150, 13-19. Los Angeles Thieves 145, 14-15. Miami Heretics 130, 12-18. And finally, Minnesota Rocker at the number 8th overall position with 130 CDL points, 10-20. For your playoff qualification cutoff, the Vegas Legion 120 with 11-18, Carolina Royal Ravens 120, 10-21, Los Angeles Guerrillas 120, 10-21, and finally the Boston Breach 50 CDL points, 5-22. So guys, looking at this right here, you're gonna kind of know practically at the end of this major, online qualifiers, I should say, of who's going to make the playoffs for CoD Champs. And so far, this list is about accurate as it's going to be. Boston is technically eliminated already. There's no way in hell I see them, honestly, winning any matches moving forward. I know they just signed Major Maniac to a deal, but it's too late, in my personal opinion. Because, I mean, this weekend they got a tough matchup against Seattle, and that's their only matchup for the weekend. And Seattle is on a roll right now, because I believe they just defeated the Toronto Ultra in a 3-2. And then I want to say they defeated someone else in a 3. I think it was Los Angeles Guerrillas in a 3-0. So Seattle, they're picking up steam right now, and that's good for them because they're fighting for that number 5th overall position going into CoD Champs and trying to make up for all those losses they had earlier in the season. Vegas Legion, Carolina Royal Ravens, and Guerrillas, they're both sitting at 120, so they need 10 CDL points for either team to make it into CoD Champs. But the problem is, the Miami Heretics, you don't know when they're going to win, honestly. I mean, their 2 wins in the Major 3 tournament kind of put them over the edge a little bit to kind of separate themselves from the rest of the pack, but I just see them falling off. I see Minnesota falling off, and then that's where Vegas and I'm going to say the Guerrillas, the Ravens has honestly disappointed me this season. You got TJ Haley and Clayster. I mean, that's just enough to start winning you a lot of matches. But they only won 10 matches and lost 21. So don't sit here and tell me that it's a Clayster or TJ problem. No, I think it's the coaching problem for the Ravens. But then there again, Clayster, he's going to probably go into the free agency market yet again this offseason, and he's going to find another new team. I would say probably Gorillas or Boston, whoever. Because that's normally how Clayster's career has been here lately. It's just moving from team to team, and he's like the OBJ of the Call of Duty League pretty much, except Clayster's got 3 rings and OBJ's only got 1. So, no shots fired at OBJ. I'm just sitting here saying that that's kind of a career right now for Clayster. He's moving from team to team. He's a great veteran piece, don't get me wrong, but it's just, I think he's being put in situations where he don't necessarily need to be in, but he's putting himself there because he's wanting to help that team out, and it's just not working. The chemistry is just not there with him and that coaching staff. With the Ravens, I mean, it was like that for the Subliners after they won CoD Champs in that inaugural season, and then of course he went to New York with Crimsix. So it's a give or take right there, but I'm already predicting Clayster being a free agent this offseason, and then, going to a different team like Miami, Minnesota, just whoever. So Boston already eliminated, in my personal opinion. Vegas, Ravens, Gorillas fighting for an 8th overall pick, maybe even 7th. I'm predicting Miami Heretics falling off along with the Minnesota Rocker. Then after that, you really got your top 8. That is going to be set for CoD Champs. So now getting into the top 4 right here. So the New York Subliners sitting at 265. I think they're going to be comfortable right in that spot right there. I mean, they're points ahead of the Seattle Surge, 265 compared to 150. I think they're fine right there. But I do believe that the 2 and 3 spot's going to be switched. Because yes, Toronto did lose to the Seattle Surge, and Optic Texas did lose to the Las Vegas Legion all this past weekend, while Atlanta FaZe won out their series, which they only had 1, and that was, I want to say it was against New York, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, in a 3-2. So FaZe obviously the only one in the top 4 that won their series this past weekend. But that's just not to say that was just a fluke from Optic and Toronto losing their series. But that just necessarily don't help their case trying to fight for that number 1 overall position that Atlanta FaZe currently holds. If you ask me, I believe the list should go like this. Atlanta FaZe, obviously the number 1. Number 2, definitely Toronto. Number 3, Optic. And then, of course, number 4, all the way throughout down, it will be, New York Subliners, 5, 6, 7, 8. Of course, that switches out, but I believe Seattle's got that 5th spot locked up. But again, it's going to be 6, 7, and 8 that's really going to change. And then, of course, 2 and 3 might possibly switch. It just depends on how Optic Texas handles a lot of their series moving forward. And like this weekend, they got the Minnesota Rocker, which is in that, top 8, sitting at the 8th overall position. Now, am I going to sit here and say that Minnesota Rocker is going to win this? Absolutely not. But there is a chance, though, that they could. I mean, hell, no one predicted the Vegas Legion beating Optic Texas, and Vegas Legion is out of the playoffs already, according to the chart I'm looking at right here on the CallOfDutyLeague.com site. That's what I love about this esports, for especially Call of Duty. You just never know what's going to happen in this league. There's a lot of surprise matches. Hell, I remember back in Black Ops Cold War, Atlanta FaZe was on a tear. And then Los Angeles Guerrillas just out of fucking nowhere 3-0'd Atlanta FaZe right before CoD Champs. And you're sitting here, what the hell? What the hell's going on with FaZe? They've been so dominant, undefeated, and then here's Los Angeles Guerrillas. Oh, we're just going to 3-0 Atlanta FaZe today. And they're going to take it. Like, what the hell is going on here? You just never know. And that's what this season's practically been. It's been an up and down season, I would have to say. More up than downs. And when you have those ups, having surprises like that definitely means a lot to this league right here. So, I like it right here. I hope you guys do. And if you do, hit that like button here on YouTube. Subscribe. It definitely does help out me pumping out each and every single Friday's episodes for you guys to listen to on your way to work, while you're working out at the gym, or just casually gaming and just listen to a podcast in general. All right, guys, so we are going to get into the schedule now for the Online Qualifiers Week 2. So Friday, June 7th, you got the New York Subliners taking on the Seattle Surge, Minnesota Rocker taking on the Miami Heretics, and for your main event, you got the Carolina Royal Ravens taking on the Atlanta FaZe. So for your Friday matches right here, I'm going to say it's New York over Seattle 3-2, Minnesota over Miami in a 3-2, and Atlanta over Carolina in a 3-1. There's no sweeps that day, but I do feel like the Atlanta FaZe got that advantage over the Carolina Royal Ravens. Saturday, June 8th, you got the Boston Breach taking on Seattle, Vegas Legion taking on the New York Subliners, Los Angeles Thieves taking on the Carolina Royal Ravens, and the Miami Heretics taking on the Los Angeles Guerrillas. So in order right there, I'm going to say Seattle over Boston, 3-1, New York over Vegas, 3-2. I think that New York does struggle a little bit, while Vegas is coming off their high by defeating the Optic Texas squad. I'm going to say Thieves over Carolina in a 3-1, and Los Angeles Guerrillas over Miami Heretics in a 3-2. Miami is enough of a team to keep you competitive, but they just can never get over that hump, I do believe. And that's what this team lacks. It's just that extra little oomph in their game. They're so dominant throughout the series, and they win a few of the maps, but they can never close anything out. Now, during that Major 1, dude, I'm telling you, they were near about unstoppable. You're sitting here thinking, wow, okay, this is really good, because Team Heretics taking over the Florida Mutineers to form the Miami Heretics, this is a great combo, and they're going to start winning a lot of matches. But then when that Major 1, tournament came around where it was on land, everything just started falling apart for the Heretics, and I just hate that for them. So maybe next season they can switch things around, get a better coaching staff, but this is year 1 under the new franchise with Team Heretics. So finally, on Sunday, June 9th, you got the Los Angeles Guerrillas taking on the Atlanta FaZe, Toronto Ultra taking on the Miami Heretics, and finally, Optic Texas taking on the Minnesota Rocker. So wow, Miami Heretics has got 3 matches back to back to back each day. Wow, so they are really desperate for some CDL points right now. But unfortunately, they're going to gain 0 all weekend. All weekend. I have that feeling. So, you already know my prediction for the Toronto series. It's going to be a 3-0 over that. Los Angeles Guerrillas under Atlanta FaZe. I'm going to say Atlanta FaZe is going to win this. I'm going to say they're going to struggle a little bit for some odd reason. 3-2. I think they've been exposed in that hardpoint game. Search and Destroy has just been up and down. You never know when they're really going to win that series anymore. Control is definitely their game mode this year. I will say that for sure. And hardpoint was up until the Major 3 tournament. But they really need to start rethinking a lot of strategies And of course, I know James Crowder is definitely going to cook up a plan to start manipulating and coming up with just any strategic ideas of hardpoint and search and destroy to start winning those matches and put themselves in a league above Optic Texas and Toronto Ultra. So I still going to say 3-2. Atlanta does struggle this weekend over the Los Angeles Guerrillas, but has no problem taking care, of course, of the Carolina Royal Ravens. And obviously, you know my prediction already. Optic Texas over the Minnesota Rocker in a 3-0 fashion. That's really about my only 3-0 I have for this entire weekend, pretty much. You know, of course, you know, Boston, you know, they say competitive. I like what they do. You know, every team is competitive. Don't get me wrong. They can stay in a fight as long as they can, but there's just never no closing out drive in these bottom tier teams like the Heretics or, you know, Gorillas or anything like that. You're going to find the closeout kind of phase during the match in the Atlanta phases, Toronto Ultras, Optic Texas, sometimes New York Subliners. You know, Subliners does have a little reputation right now of not really closing out a series as well. So it is what it is. So those are your official matches for week number 2 of Online Qualifiers. And guys, honestly, if I'm not mistaken, we should be having just maybe one more week of qualifiers? Yeah, no, 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks of qualifiers and then we're finished. We really are. Yeah, going through right here, you know, phases only got 2 matches next week, and then the following week they got 2 matches again, Ultra and Heretics. But other than that, yeah, we're pretty much done in 2 weeks with the Major 4. You know, of course, you know, go through the tournament, but then after that, it's CoD Champs, baby, and this is really where it's all going to matter. You either make it or break it in CoD Champs. There's no exceptions. Who's going to be the best of the best? Is the Atlanta phase from the Cold War going to be reignited again? And when I say reignited, I mean like a fire up under each one's asses. Celium, Abizi, Simp, and Draza. Is this team going to come alive? Or are they going to be ice cold by CoD Champs getting here? Is Optic Texas going to start winning more matches? Or are they going to win the 2nd world title in the franchise's history for Optic? Or is Toronto Ultra going to get their first chip? Who knows? That's, again, I refer back to what I said earlier. Call of Duty League Esports, or just COD Esports in general, it is so wild and it's so unpredictable. You just don't know who's going to win. And that's the beauty of this esport right here. So enough kind of like, you know, being like all humble and like motivational right here, you know, support the COD League or whatever, which I do want you to support the Call of Duty League as well. But again, it's just the beauty of this esports. You know, you never know who's going to win. And that's what really kind of drives me to make these podcasts right here, because you're like, wow, like, oh my gosh. So guys, let me know what you're doing this weekend. Are you watching any of the Call of Duty League matches? Or, you know, what's your plans this weekend? I want to kind of interact with you guys a little bit more on the socials at MMSTC Morgan on X, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, I'm there. But guys, I sure hope you did enjoy, and if you did, make sure to like button wherever you are listening from, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your preferred podcast. Make sure to download the podcast, like it on YouTube. Tremendously does help me out to make each episode for you guys to listen to on Friday. But until then, I, Morgan, will catch you all later. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this Belly Up Sports Podcast Network product. Some said we go belly up, so we made it our name, and we're still here.